One of our favorite guests is always Matt, a writer. He's got a new profile up on Steph Curry at Rolling Stone. Really great story. We always love talking to Matt. As always, Jenkins and Jonez, hosted by my good friends in real life and on the internet. LeJethro Jenkins, a.k.a. John.
What's up, Bubbas?
Dragonfly Jones, a.k.a. Tyler.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
And I'm Gardy B, a.k.a. Mike. And as you gear up for fall...
Motherfucking Micah.
As you gear up for fall, you need the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free.
Yes, as someone who works in talent acquisition, I can tell you firsthand, it's what I lean on to do a lot of my networking, a lot of my reaching out. So nothing but the highest praises for LinkedIn Jobs. It's what I lean on heavily as a recruiter.
And I have a lot of friends who have found it to be very useful in their career too, so...
Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidate you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/JandJ. That's linkedin.com/JandJ to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Matt just dropped a huge Steph Curry profile for Rolling Stone that was very, very interesting, Matt. And we always love talking about when you have these big, juicy stories. We always love talking about them with you. So first of all, how much of a pain in the ass is it to birth one of those stories, you know, especially for like a legacy publication? You're like, it's Steph Curry. I'm sure you interviewed him 10 times. For the story. I'm sure there was like 17 drafts. How much of a relief is it when you actually get to like push it out in the world and just kind of set it free?
Well, it was weird because it was slow and then it was fast. Like we reached out to Steph's people, I think literally the day after the Dubs won the finals. And they were pretty quick with the response that he was in, that he would, you know, have some real talk, but that his schedule was like down to the minute, right? He's like private jetting to a new state every day, new country every day. So we made this kind of deal where I would talk to everyone in his orbit, right? His mom, dad, sister, brother. And actually, I got this nugget from Seth Curry very early on in my reporting that they'd talked about this potential KD reunion with the Warriors trade. And he was like, yeah, the fact that Steph is even entertaining this idea says a lot about him, right? In terms of his competitive spirit and willingness to, you know, blow it up just to run it back for real. And I was kind of sitting on this. All right, great. I'm gonna ask Steph about this when the moment's right. I had to wait like a month before we first hung out, kind of warming him up, first 2 or 3 interviews. And then we're finally sitting down for like this big real talk interview. And the publicist is like, over my shoulder, like, gotta wrap it up. He's got to go to the next thing. And so I like wait off the publicist and I just like hit him with the KD question. And he just gives me this like amazing news that I knew would go, you know, set NBA Twitter on fire and drive Stephen A. Smith up a wall. But I had to sit on that for like another month because my later encounters with him, like I went to the photo shoot and then we had another kind of hangout period, which was real tight up against our deadline to ship this thing to the printer. So it was like slow and then fast and then like cramming the story and, you know, got to get all the edits, you know, while I'm on vacation before Labor Day. And then like we finished it last week and we put it online right away. Cause I guess, you know, Rolling Stone kind of gets the balance between dead tree print and giving the people what they want.
Good for them. Good for them. There's a lot of legacy publications who do not understand that. Cut to Elle magazine dropping their Gisele Bundchen interview from June today. Say, hey, there's been some breaking developments in the Gisele Bundchen story over the last 3 months, guys.
Right. So, Matt, you know, going back to when you asked Steph that question, you know, you mentioned you were in Long Beach, and Steph was at the Boys Club with Snoop, and you dropped it, and you know, him and Snoop had a conversation about it. So, Inquiring minds want to know, did you hit the blunt with Snoop or not? You don't have to incriminate Steph here. But did you partake in the sticky icky?
I think I got in a little trouble for sharing a little too much from my Nets book reporting about KD and the sticky icky around his crib. Let's just say that Snoop did not smell of anything. It was quite early in the morning, and we were at the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, and it may have been appropriate for any of us to be too far blazed. I did ask Steph, I don't think this made it into the story, if he smoked. And he was like, I think he said something like, I have, but not frequently. Which is a classic kind of Steph political
it's a classic
answer.
guy who might run
like,
for president.
Depends
one day,
what your meeting of is.
Right? I have a question. If Snoop offered it to you, would you have at the Boys and Girls
100%,
Club in the morning? Okay.
100%.
Smoking Snoop is bucket list.
I was ready
like,
for it.
Everybody.
I was ready for it. I'd flown in the night before and didn't have time to stop at the local cannabis shop to be ready to provide, which is a apparently tried and true magazine writer trick, is to just have it ready for you in case your subject is really ready to let loose a little.
I believe at Rolling Stone in particular, that has been a useful tip as well. Yes.
And harder things than that, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, but on a serious note, an interesting angle to this article was how I think it posed the question of, can you be an activist without necessarily being a revolutionary, right? It seems that that's something that Steph is kind of trying to figure out, because, Steph has said in a roundabout way, I'm no revolutionary. I'm trying to figure out how to use my platform to its best ability. I'm not trying to get in the way of co-opting movements, but I want my platform and my voice to matter. There was a part where, he mentioned that he wished they did more during that Clipper series with the Donald Sterling fiasco. Like, he mentions he wished that they really boycotted that playoff game. So, I'm just curious, from the conversations that you've had with Steph, like what way do you see him leaning, in regards to moving forward with his activism?
He definitely leans in the middle on everything. He's like a classic centrist politician, I think we first met up like a week after Bill Russell died. And as kind of my entree to him, I gave him my copy of Bill Russell's Memoir, which is amazing. If you haven't read it, it's out of print. But and I handed him like this little newspaper clipping. I think it's from '64. Russell had after the murder of Medgar Evers, the civil rights activist, had helped to open like the first integrated basketball camp in Jackson, Mississippi. And when he got back to Boston, a reporter asked Bill Russell, in the way that Steph is often asked political questions and kind of caught on his heels. And the guy had asked if the reporter had asked Bill Russell if he'd feared for his life upon his return. And Russell said, I'm a man. If I have to be a boy to be popular, then I don't want it. If popularity depends on a thing like this, then I don't give a damn. And I asked Steph, do you care about not being as popular if it means you have to be not as safe? And he claimed, I don't care about being popular. It's not about that. And that was at first, but he remains immensely popular. And as we spent the next kind of 3 weeks together, kind of confronting his past, like the Sterling stuff, like this bathroom bill stuff, like the Kaepernick stuff, it became pretty clear to me that he at once kind of, cared deeply and meticulously about maintaining that popularity, but that he's starting to, will himself to stretch himself, at least in conversations with me. And perhaps in real life with these kind of activists and community organizers, he's come to know. So we'll see. He can be wishy-washy. Admittedly, he tries to protect himself to appeal to all people, and then do the work behind the scenes.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. First of all, Tyler, that was also the first thing I had down to ask about as well. Was I thought it was an interesting thing to key on, and then obviously, especially with the Robert Sarver stuff, that it was like that the Donald Sterling moment, that was a moment of enough clarity that was the thing that he seizes on, that he's like, no one could say, I mean, because I'm sort of thinking of his brain processing that popularity side of that equation in that answer, right? No one retrospectively could be angry at us boycotting Donald Sterling, right? He's not in the club anymore. He's sort of universally reviled or whatever. But I also thought it was interesting, and I'm sure this was an intentional choice on your part, that he's sort of so linked with Barack Obama, right? Because I think that's like politically, you sort of feel the same thing about Obama, and kind of maybe understandably from Steph's perspective, that for Obama, he wrote in his memoir, which I greatly enjoyed the first half of that's been published, like everyone wants him to do this. Everyone wants him to do so many things. And he's like, I'm the only person in the world who understands what it's like to wear the burden that I'm wearing. So people can want whatever they want from me, but they have no idea, what the expectations, et cetera, like. And it sort of feels like maybe there's a linkage there with Steph that it's just, and that a lot of these athletes have. It's like, dude, this is not Bill Russell. This is not the 1960s. If you are a Steph Curry or a LeBron James, you're a Fortune 500 CEO.
But I think it's different for LeBron and Steph. And we got into this a little. He really doesn't like the comparisons on the court between himself and LeBron. But it was interesting at that Boys and Girls Club. There's a gigantic.
I don't think anyone would like that comparison.
there was this gigantic sign on at the Boys and Girls Club, big sign that said LeBron James Family Foundation. I was like, okay, LeBron's already been here. He's already helped to rebuild this entire joint. It was kind of a microcosm to me. The LeBron James Family Foundation is very kind of press releasey, does a lot, tries to do everything. Steph's Family Foundation was actually registered for like 501c3 tax purposes as the Stephen and Ayesha Curry Family Foundation. And Ayesha was like, no. And I don't know if this was because it sounded too much like LeBron's, but it was very inward focused, and they wanted to change it to eat, learn, play, to be outward focused. And Steph said, he admires, again, I don't think any of this made it into the story, but he admires what LeBron has done in doing it his own way. He said, it's not for everybody. And I think Steph realizes that he is more palatable than anyone in sports, really. And he needs to protect that. And LeBron has poked the bear, has gotten his back against Trump. And he's the one calling him you bum, even though, Trump is kind of treating Steph as a weapon of mass distraction. And I think he realizes he needs to steady the course in order to keep that clout. And then eventually, however he chooses and will choose, to weaponize that himself.
I thought it was interesting that Steph loved that Bron put him in front of those Donald Trump bullets with that tweet, because I always thought it was hilarious. I thought it might have been a kind of passive aggressive on Bron's part to break some heat on Steph, but Steph loving it like that was a big reveal for me there.
Yeah, he was cracking up about it. And we got pretty deep into this kind of episode that I've always been fascinated by, where in the wake of that, the whole NFL was like kneeling. Jerry Jones was kneeling, and all of Kaepernick's protest had lost its clout, even though in the same weekend that Trump went after the Warriors, he went after Kaepernick, said, get that son of a bitch off the field. And I always thought that the Warriors, they had like the first preseason game that year, would take a knee and bring it back and talk about it and be this kind of team of our time. And then I was like, did they chicken out? And I've always tried to, for my book and for this story, try to get inside that room. And it just seems like these guys, Iggy told me in a quote that wasn't in the story, he was like, I think I have here, we were part of a reality show. We just became a part of the shit show. And I think you have to be wary of that. And I think that's when sometimes you say, all right, let's not waste our bullets on a shit show. You're just making yourself more of the circus, and we're trying not to do that. So I think the intentionality of these decisions of these guys to not necessarily be obvious activists, but to be celebrity activists, where, Kim Kardashian can get to the White House and fight her good fight. Trump does it for the photo, but she's still, I don't know, give her a little credit.
That is different. That is different, right? I mean, I always sort of feel for the guys when you have the Bill Russell comparison, because no one's ever going to compare to Bill Russell, but also to the 2020s, and your position as an athlete in America is so different than it was for a black basketball player in the early 1960s as it was for Bill Russell, right? And like you said, like wielding that PR is not necessarily wishy-washy. To Tyler's point about, can you make progress and be an activist without being a revolutionary? Like, the bigger the audience you command, to some extent, the more you can do now, right? But he is persistently wishy-washy throughout your story.
Exactly.
Sort of press for some specifics on things.
I will say I did press on the hypothetical Curry-Kerr ticket for the White House that I know NBA Twitter frequently nominates them or Pop. And Steve told me that Steph would be president, I'd be vice. that's how that ticket would look. His name would be on the top. I did ask Steve, if he'd ever been formally approached about running for office, and he said no, and he doesn't plan to, and neither does Steph. Steph said it's not on my radar right now. After saying like I asked him once, he's like negative. No, I'm no Herschel Walker out here. And then the next time I just follow up and tell him what Steve said, he's like, it's not on my radar right now. But with the level of influence I know I have, I feel like I'm just getting started.
He popped the top. You asked him about it again. He was like, let me pop the top on this and hand you.
Exactly.
Going back to the relationship that Steph and Obama have. I thought it was hilarious that y'all discussed how when Steph said what they gonna say now after he got ring number 4, Obama hit him up and said, bro, curse when you talk your shit. Say what the fuck are they gonna say now, right? Like
I really had to peel that out of him. I really had to get that out of Steph. He was being the nice Christian mama's boy, didn't want to break out that F-bomb. And I was I was trying to talk to Obama for the story and talk to the people he's influenced and influenced back. And I almost had to fact check that with Obama. But I just thought it's this, of all the questions asked Barack Obama, did you say fuck is not really appropriate. So Steph eventually, when I pressed enough, I think I asked him on three separate occasions whether Obama said fuck. And I think what we printed is the furthest he was willing to go. But yeah, that was a cool detail. But I also love this kind of mentor-mentee relationship. They almost did this corny ad for Obama's My Brother's Keeper initiative. But then when Steph said on a podcast a couple years back that the moon landing might be fake, I love that he got this scolding email that night from Obama being like, do better, do something about this, which is kind of a dope relationship up in that kind of stratosphere, but also, again, instructive about Steph's religious stuff, right? He said that was in some senior year in high school at his Christian high school's, apologetics class where he was shown a conspiracy theory video and told to be able to argue the other side just for the hell of it or the heaven of it. And that was surprising that he was that honest about that, because I thought I was maybe walking into another Kyrie moment there, but this man, as I well know, is not Kyrie Irving.
Right. Yeah. I feel like that was a recurring thing with Steph, is that he mentioned that a lot of his beliefs are rooted in his faith, which is, run of the mill for everyone. But for, it seems like, I don't want to say he used that as a scapegoat, but you pressed him on some hard issues, in regards to is he pro-choice, pro-life? And he just kind of, kind of dancing around it a bit, saying, I'm a man of faith, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean?
Dancing around it a lot.
Answer. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I really pressed him on the bathroom bill from North Carolina when the NBA basically boycotted the All-Star game in Steph's hometown. And he's like, well, I was surprised to hear it and to be asked about public policy at practice. And I was like, okay, well, I followed up again later, do you feel like you're letting down your LGBT fans, community, liberals? And, he said basically no, because he knows that everybody gives these, including LeBron, we kind of made eye contact about the I'm not educated enough excuse that LeBron pulls out a lot. And he's like, I'm not saying that, but at the moment I was legitimately unaware of what the policy was. And then I'm pushing him on well, what do you say to people who says the pastor at your Pentecostal church, is anti-gay and is up in abortion issues? And he's like, well, I'm a man of faith, and if that doesn't work for everybody, I'm okay with that. And I like that he's not totally pandering to liberals, but he also clearly doesn't want to alienate, the base of religious people who buy his sneakers.
Yeah, I think it's sort of an interesting thing, and we've talked about this on the show about Michael Jordan, I think when The Last Dance was coming out, that it's in some way, the way that these athletes are being so cautious about the different, like you said, they're sort of different demos, right? The people who buy the sneakers, it sort of does turn them into a national level politician, whether that's what they're trying to be or not. You said it's how do I appeal to my LGBTQ base while not alienating my religious followers? It's well, that's exactly the problem that only presidents or large corporations are supposed to deal with, right?
It's working, right? We actually, I had this research for Morning Consult conduct a legit poll And it turns out Americans like Steph more than both Trump and Biden. They love him as much as LeBron. And the remaining 8% who either like or dislike or hate him are basically old white dudes who like football and Trump. And, so he's alienated like a little corner of the far right, but he's got the big portion of the pie that he doesn't want to offend. And I think that's good-hearted. Like, he wants to do right with the extreme clout he has.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not trying to cast aspersions. I think like your story did a great job of grappling with genuinely what it is like to be the singular person that he is in the singular position that he is in 2022. Like it's and his answers about his church, I thought spoke to that. Like, no, like honestly, who I am is conflicted and ambivalent about a lot of this stuff. Like I did not.
But I was giving him this platform to like go there, right? And instead, he wanted to talk about what it means to go there, right? Like he would not say the word Trump back at me. And I told him, I'm not trying to bait you into a quote here, but like, what do you think about him? And I think there's another interview that was cut for space was with Jordan Spieth, the superstar golfer. I know we have some golfers hosting this podcast who,
John's about to knock us off the Zoom right now.
And Spieth was saying, you're seeing that athletes, as they get in the last decade of their career, you start to see them wanting to continue to push. I think speaking of Steph, I think he doesn't give a fuck. It's just that him not giving a fuck isn't the same as Trump not giving a fuck.
Right.
It's going to come out differently. He understands, appreciates, and embraces the idea of influence. You can have socially without it being what's sexy, which is brash headlines. Steph knows that every word he's going to say is a headline, but is he willing to actually not give a fuck rather than just say he doesn't anymore? So I think that remains to be seen. There's definitely sequels to this story to be had.
Well, and I think that's what's like fascinating to me again about this modern moment. And there really are only a handful of people that inhabit the level of influence is a good word for it that you're talking about. But if you look at that conversation between Obama and Steph, when Steph made the crack about the moon landing, it shows you like, again, there's only, a couple dozen people who have this many people listening to them. But on the one side, you have this guy who says, no, there's an inherent responsibility that comes with this influence to not say vaccines are fake or the earth is flat or whatever. And then you have, on the other side, athletes who are sort of not taking that responsibility. But you also have politicians, right? Like Obama and Trump are sort of diametrically opposed as well. And Trump similarly has this outsized influence and obviously takes the exact opposite approach to Obama of like, whatever I say, I'll just say it and whatever,
Not to flex too hard, but I talked to Fauci about this very thing, which is cool. I'm trying to talk to him about a lot of vaccine reporting I did for Rolling Stone. And he's the biggest Steph ever, right? Like they did some kind of, believe COVID is real IG lives back when celebrities were doing that. We were all cooped up at home. And Fauci was very much like, it's good that he has this special effect of his magic on the court and his, his likability off the court because people, don't like Fauci. And he was like, are there some people who trust Steph more than me? Thank goodness. But he also, we got to talking a bit of, let's just say I brought up Andrew Wiggins and Kyrie, and without mentioning them specifically, he said, you always got to be careful that you don't inappropriately use influence. So I think you're right on there. I did, for the record, ask Fauci if he would vote for a hypothetical ticket of Kerr and Curry over Kyrie and Joe Tsai.
What was the answer there, Matt?
Dr. Fauci said to that matchup, I have to admit, I am a really strong fan of Steph Curry. He's sort of like an amazing guy. He's just a good human being, really fine man. I'd have to go with Steph on any ticket. And he acknowledged that was despite his bias as a Brooklyn native.
That's great. Do you I know John wants to hear more about the golf component of the story, which I thought was interesting, that that seems to be, and I think this also is very much what you hear from Barack Obama. He's not trying to come out and make a statement that golf needs more black people and minority. Like, he's not trying to be the face of a message. What he's trying to do is start something with the academy, with the team that he's got, right, that will actually give people more opportunities. And I thought that was an interesting representation of kind of that like larger philosophical approach.
Yeah, I think it's a dope flex that he is going into a completely other sport where he knows that there's a gazillion hoopers before and after him who are trying to help the next generation of hoopers, right? And I was talking to this kid. This isn't a story. It was a junior at Howard named Otis Ferguson, and he had gone up to Steph after a screening of this movie that Steph produced about the Charleston church shooting. And he was like, "Hey, Steph, let's get a round of golf before you leave." And he told Steph how he'd given up a scholarship to play golf elsewhere to go to Howard. He tried to start a club team that couldn't afford a D1 squad. And Steph was like, "Great, here's my email. This is cool." They emailed a bit. Then Steph ghosts him for like the summer. And then this kid gets a DM from some guy on Steph's team one day saying like, "Dude, Steph, sorry for ghosting you. Steph is now funding the entire Howard golf team for like $1 million." Which is just dope. And the coach at Howard was telling me, that impact is greater than Tiger Woods' impact on the minority golf community over all these years. And so this tour he's doing, the Underrated Golf Tour, is legitimately like a big feeder program into big college programs. So it's not like it's just some PR stunt. These are legit golfers, and I think he's really making a difference in it, which is cool because he is not a golfer, although he's pretty good.